Alright, let's talk about Furina, the Hydro Archon, the Queen of Theatrics, and hands down one of the most dramatic characters we've got in Genshin Impact. When she first dropped, she was instantly quite a meta pick with very nice buff, decent Hydro application, and she made New Vlad and Hu Tao even more ridiculous. She wasn't just good, she was pretty much a character that was on most of our pooling lists. But now, well, let's just say the tides are kinda shifting. With new characters, evolving metas, and some questionable kit design choices have made people wonder, is Furina still a dominant character as she once was, or is she gradually being Powercrept? Especially more newer characters are coming. Now, just putting it slightly out there, with the arrival of Shilonin and Sitlali, Furina once undisputed reign as a top tier support is kind of being challenged, and that's going to be the whole point of the video, to look a little bit more in depth into Furina's current situations and discuss more into it. Furina is back and she's basically a hot topic of this phase, so if you're planning to swipe for pooling, then don't forget to check out Loot Bar. If you know me, I've been recommending you guys Loot Bar before, since you can always save almost a 20% on all of your top-ups. With over 100,000 orders and so many good reviews at this point, you can be sure that Loot Bar is trustworthy. Here you can see my order receipts of all of my top-ups that I have done. So guys, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in my description, as it can be a great way for you to save your money, especially if you are topping up a large amount. Alright, before we start throwing shades, let's take a moment to appreciate why Furina is such a strong character at launch. For a while, Furina felt like the answer to everything. Now, I'm not undermining Furina in any way, because at the current point, she is still very much a strong character. She brings a lot to the table with massive team buff of up to 75% damage bonus, which does makes it one of the strongest buff in the whole game. However, it is kind of backloaded, so that you are required time to ramp up, especially if she is at a C0 level. So in realistic cases, if you are at C0 Furina, you're looking at around a 50% damage bonus. She has a bit of healing utility that, lets HP scaling DPS like New Vlad, Alekina, Hu Tao maintain their max damage potential. A bit of team-wide healing that allows your team to run low investment healer, or sometimes even forego healing entirely in some cases, like you have self-healing cases like Alekino. She's got Hydro application, though not as consistent as Xingqiu and Yelan, but it works well in a Vaporize and Electro Charge team, though her Hydro application can be inconsistent at times. She's rather free-to-play friendly and also world friendly if you're looking into her cons. Whether you had a meta unit or a random 4-star, Furina always find a place in your teams. She can work in multiple archetypes, like thrives in HP scaling as well as general damage buffing compositions. And also with her ability to sap out your team's HP, Marshall's a Hunter set. User really love this, which definitely enables the Hunter set build for multiple DPS units for the likes of New Vlad, Hu Tao, and even including herself. So yeah, she still got it with everything that she's capable of doing, but as time gone by, there are certain things that we need to look into and take into consideration, and so let's talk about what kind of change. Okay, so what happened? Well, new character happened, that's what it is, and they aren't just good, they are basically trying to steal her spotlight. First off, we have Shilonin, 40% damage buff instantly, really nice healing, and a 36% resistance shred. Sitlali being the undisputed Melt Queen. If you're running a Pyro DPS character, you're probably gonna be using Sitlali most of the time over Furina at this point, because Melt gameplay is technically just quite better than Vaporize. And with Sitlali being so strong and pretty much complete at a C0 level, giving you decent shielding as well, Sitlali is basically a direct competition to what Furina in many of the team building at this point. And there's also the cases of Chevrus in the matter as well. Now, Chevrus released near Furina banner back then. However, with time gone by and Chevrus has always been on some of the more decent banner, at this point in time, many of us actually already got access to a C6 Chevrus, and especially if you're looking into a free-to-play kind of team building, C6 Chevrus is just straight up broken. Which of course, you can have an overloaded Chevrus on one team and Furina still on the other team, but this is also a matter of free-to-play player where you've already got a very amazingly good 4-star character. You may sometimes just want to straight up save on other characters character that you like. And also there's our lovely Mavuika Archon as well. She's not just an amazing DPS, especially for free-to-play player, but she also has the ability to buff and being a sub-pyro DPS character if you like it as well. So Furina used to have a lot of teams, but right now there's actually a lot of is she going to be the best in this specific team moment? Other than that, as I've mentioned before, Furina being at the C0, having her buff being a bit slow. She technically does provide 75% damage bonus, but again, it is only around 50% many of the time. And especially if your team is more about fast burst heavy damage, you might not even get half of her fanfare stack before the fight is over. Well, meanwhile, for example, Shilonen to just slap an instant 40% damage bonus on your team like it's nothing, very fast setup, no drama, and just pure stat. And also her values kind of depends on her teammates as well, because without a consistent HP draining unit like Nuvalet, for example, her fanfare stack is pretty slow. And while there's also that topic of her hydro application being not too great as well, because it technically works, but is it really reliable? I would just have to say not really, because compared to, you know, like Xingqiu, Yelan, Furina's 3 little pets are just unpredictable. Sometimes they hit the right target, sometimes they just... This makes her awkward in Vape or Bloom teams where consistent hydro uptime is pretty much crucial, and if your hydro application is weaker, then of course your reaction damage suffers. And then there's also another thing of the potential of the meta moving away from her as well. Now at launch, Furina fits into almost every meta teams, but now the strongest team technically don't need her. Well, currently, the only consistent DPS that's still using Furina is Nuvalet, but even he has a vaporized alternative with Shilonen that many players prefer. Especially with the C2 Nuvalet, if you're investing into his constellations, he actually doesn't need Furina on his team, making her an optional pick rather than a necessity. And currently, in some of the good meta teams out there that she used to be in, you know, like Mulanni Hypercarry, Garming and D-Look Melt Plunge, Sidlali is being taken into consideration a lot more. And also, newer characters are having kind of like an anti-synergy with Furina. But the recent characters have been kind of designed in a way that doesn't really work too well with Furina. You know, like Emily and Kinich, they want burning and not hydro, where Furina is not going to be there. Mulanni, her mechanics just make Furina buff really unreliable, as well as pyro healing meta, you know, like pyro teams that now prefers more pyro healers like Charus, leaving very little space for Furina. And especially if we're looking into the hypercarry meta, they're shifting away from Furina. But the top tier teams right now focus a lot on vaporize and melt reactions, where Sidlali is technically simply better. Shilonen is also now the best general support, offering resistant shred and a damage bonus, making her a superior choice in multi-wave content, resulting in Furina is not much of an optimal pick in teams where she was once considered a best in slot. Now that's the current situation of Furina. However, if we're looking into the future kind of, I would say prediction, but where Genshin meta is potentially heading, will Furina still be a good investment for your Primogems? With that, we have to first look into whether or not Furina has the potential to regain her place. And the only way that can happen is if the meta actually shift back towards sub DPS focused team. If the game releases new sub DPS unit that lacks good support, Furina may become viable in pretty much those teams. However, if hypercarries continue to dominate the meta, then Furina will remain in the decline. If, for example, you know, when Shesnaya comes, they introduces hydro based hypercarry, Furina could regain her importance, though obviously that also depends on that specific character kits. For example, if we take into consideration, you know, like Mulanni case, then yes, it also depends on the characters as well. Or a new HP scaling DPS that directly benefits from fanfare stack. This could make Furina meta come back, but that could be pretty hard, which leads into the chances of Furina being Powercrept further. Well, again, Naya in future may just introduce more reaction based character or character with newer mechanics, pushing her out even further. Or if the game introduces another very good hydro support that has a bit of sub DPS capability, for example, or another just generally support, it may actually just make her completely obsolete. Which leads us into the questions of where does Furina actually stand right now? Is she still a pretty good pick for you, or has she completely fallen off? So here's something about Furina, right? Furina was never designed to be a hyper carry support. She wasn't meant to maximize the strongest teams, but she was meant to make weaker teams more viable. Think of it like this, right? Furina turns dirt into silver, while Xilonen and Citlali turns silver into gold. And in today's hyper carry focused meta, teams don't just want silver anymore, they kind of want diamonds. That's why Furina is rarely found in top performing teams currently, except in a few niche scenarios. But does that mean she is not worth pulling? Because overall, as I mentioned before, we're not trying to undermine Furina and just focus on the downside of Furina at this point, because overall she's still a very good character if you have her on your account. So in order to help you make kind of like a better decision, here are some of the questions that you can ask on your specific account to see whether or not Furina is relevant for you. First off is if you need a flexible support for multiple teams on your account, then yes, Furina can still be useful. If you want to optimize for hyper carry teams, then no, there are better options, especially when if you've already have Xilonen and Citlali at this current point, you don't have Furina, you're looking into pooling for the meta, then Furina is unnecessary unless you love Furina and you want to pull for her, then that's obviously a different topic, right? Now if you're trying to pull for future proofing, then again, as we've discussed, it's a little bit risky because in current situation we have seen that many character does not synergizes too well with Furina. That's what we're seeing right now. I can't actually predict the future whether or not Furina is going to be back. Furina is still a pretty good character. She's just no longer too essential to pull. If you love her playstyle, love her as a character, yes, of course, go for it, because I myself have a C3 Furina. I just love her. I have Furina on pretty much every team of mine because she's still doing great. But if you're chasing meta power, she might not be the best long-term investment. So there's one thing for sure. She's still one of the most dramatic character in Genshin Impact, and I believe many of us love her, especially if you've already experienced the Fontaine Archon quest before. So guys, I think that's everything I have to discuss about Furina in the current meta at this point. I hope it was an interesting video for you guys. If you do have any questions or any other discussion point, feel free to leave it down in the comment sections, as me or some lovely Genshin player will always discuss with you guys there. Again guys, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, not miss out on my future Genshin videos. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me till this part of the video guys, and with that I wish you a super day, and I'll catch you on my next video.